BBC Films presents...
Let's show them some of the things we've been working on. Let's see some of you playing with a smile.
Have you ever even actually killed anybody? I mean, really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, falling asleep on someone, that doesn't count.
Come on!
What kind of man are you?
Got something warming?
Suppose you think I'm a ruined woman. You're not a woman.
What does it matter if you like someone? All those in favour?
Who do you think you are?
Brian Clough.
I'm Tamara Drew. I'm supposed to be interviewing you. Is now a good time?
You be respectful all the time. And you, say nothing.
Keira Knightley.
Well, that's a good idea.
BBC Films, making British films happen.
Most people in the 19th century turned to the pharmacist for the majority of their health care.
Pills, powders and potions.
It's clearing something.
Welcome to a time when the cure was often worse than the disease.
Victorians believed there was nothing like a good purge.
That's healed up. This is nearly improving.
And has it eased your breathing? It's much better.
Experience the weird and wonderful world of the Victorian pharmacy. Thursday at 9 on BBC Two.
There's some strong language now on BBC Two and a real insight into Brian Clough from the people who knew him.
There's never been a manager like Brian Clough before. Never. And I can't see ever another one like him ever again.
If he thought that you were absolutely magnificent, he would hang your hat on you and say, "This is it, go and play." But there were other moments in games where it would be harrowing. You'd be out trying to prove him wrong rather than prove him right.
I heard stories about how he felt at times that he had such a connection with his players that if they were just walking on the pitch, if he thought about it, he could make them turn and look at him.
Brian Clough was touched by genius. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He knew it, and he made everybody else know it, which made him an unpleasant, difficult guy to be with.
There were times when he was obviously under fantastic pressure, but he had that coolness and the ability to handle it all and make it look easy.
Great managers are great people in life. You know, they're on the verge of insanity at times, and I think Brian was one of them people. You know, he was tottering on the verge at all times.
That might be aiming for utopia, and it might mean being a little bit stupid, but that is the way I am. I'm a little bit stupid regarding this type of thing. I'm a little bit of an idealist. I do believe in fairies, and that is my, outlook.
Player, manager, pundit, celebrity, family man, psychologist, pantomime villain. Brian Clough was all of these and more. However, the story of this very complex character had a very simple beginning, on Teesside.
Got great childhood memories, not of riding horses or on yachts and things like that, but great memories of happiness in parks and playing football. A very happy home, working class, large family, 5 brothers, 2 sisters. Academically, not very bright, a bit of a letdown in the family I was. Everybody else made it to the grammar school.
Well, I remember finding the woman who used to run his kids' team. I remember her saying that he was always different from the others. Not necessarily in an arrogant way then, but he went against the flow, which I suppose marked him out at a very early age as somebody who was either going to be brushed aside completely or was going to storm his way through all the traditional ways of doing everything and say, bugger that, I'll do it my way.
After 3 years of military service, Clough signed for his hometown club. Middlesbrough had a new leader of their attack.
My fondest memories are when I was a player. And I am very happy having scored 250 league goals quicker than anybody else. But I've got to tell my grandchildren I used to be able to play football. Hey, better than Greaves's record. And Jimmy was the best of all.
I would walk with Peter Taylor and we'd meet Brian and Eddie Holliday in the main park and walk to the ground together.
I used to live over on the Longlands and Brian used to live on Grove Hill, and we would often meet as we were walking to training in this area that we're in now. He was the finest striker of a ball I've ever played with, and I've had the pleasure of playing with, I think, the two greatest goal scorers of that era. One was Jimmy Greaves and the other one was Brian Clough.
You could have let a bomb off in the penalty area when he was going through one goal. It wouldn't have affected him.
All his attributes were to be a manager, to be a good manager, even when he was playing. I think we went to Charlton and we drew 6 each. He was none too pleased, of course, and he certainly made it known to the defence in more or less how many goals do we have to score to win.
He was always completely confident about his own ability. So anybody who disagreed with him, he would ignore or even trample over. And that became more and more part of his life and his style.
As a player, I loved doing it. I'd have played till I was 90 if I could.
International recognition followed, but just 2 caps and no goals before local rival Sunderland acquired his services, a move that was to change his life on Boxing Day 1962.
Well, the ball came forward and Brian was chasing and I came out and dived across him, which goalkeepers do, to block the ball. Brian came over the top of me.
I knew it was serious, obviously, because somebody stuck me in hospital. I'd not only done my knee, I happened to bang my head. And a lot of people put it down to the way I've behaved in the last 10 years.
It was the end of his career, it was finished. And, you know, where do you go from there? And you've got to give credit to him for carrying on and doing what he achieved.
You never believe at 27 you finished in anything, do you? Not especially if you're an athlete. And I trained for 18 months, and I managed to get back onto a football field. It was just that I didn't get back as well as I left it.
Clough was influenced by the man who signed him for Sunderland, the disciplinarian Alan Brown. However, it was Brown's successor who gave Brian his first managerial break.
George Hardwick was manager there at the time, and he gave Brian a role in the youth team. And I think he went on from there, Brian, from Sunderland Youth, and I think he went to Hartlepool.
To describe Hartlepool's football club as a tip would be giving a bonus to a tip. Peter Taylor joined me there, but we really were rock bottom, but we got a spirit together. We avoided re-election, which was the norm for Hartlepool before I went there.
The first time I met him was on, I think, a Thursday night at Hartlepool where I was training with the reserves and just there on trial. And he came up to me and said, "Stand up straight, get your shoulders back and get your hair cut, you look like a girl." And it was a little bit frightening as a 16-year-old. But after the initial sort of fright had worn off, he then began to talk to me and educate me about how the game should be played.
People said, oh, he ruled by fear. It was quite the opposite. He took the fear out of football and they played to their strengths.
Now inside left, Francis. This could be very dangerous for Stockport, and the ball comes across. This must be a goal, and it is.
We thought right from the beginning, from our early days at Hartlepool when we first started management, that together we could have success quicker together than we could individually.
You're just too good to be true. After modest results with Hartlepool, Clough and Taylor were recruited by then struggling second division Derby County. The year was 1967.
I've got my mind set on football. I know how I approach it, etc., etc. Make no difference whether it's Derby County or whether it's Liverpool.
I came 18 months ago from Burton Albion to be with Brian Clough. Brian Clough, the man I know.
and I intend to stay with Brian Clough, and I intend to go with Brian Clough to top of the tree.
7 matches into the season, he made an offer of £6,500 for my services, and I then went to, obviously, negotiate a contract with him. He just said, sign that, it's the best thing you've ever done in your life, so I signed for Derby County.
When he was bought from Hartlepool at Derby, one director said to me, what have you brought us? A splather-footed, innocuous, frail weakling and all that type of thing, which as opposed to the unlearned eye, that's exactly what he was. And it was a typical director's opinion.
Clough rarely took notice of directors, instead relying on instinct and tailor to secure the talent for success. In Derby's case, Spurs legend Dave Mackay.
All the time I was there, we never had an argument. He never raised his voice. We had the shooting box at the Derby and just letting the kids have a wee shot in that. But Brian reckons I taught them how to play.
Did you?
No, just let them hit the ball and kick the ball, that was all. I never taught them anything, but Brian said it did.
David Mackay set the base, and then everybody else blossomed. They were all there waiting for everything until the sun came out, and David Mackay and Willie Carling was our sunshine.
It's Mackay this time. And it goes!
You've got a team spirit that borders on blind faith in each other, and you can't go wrong with that kind of feeling.
We've got a lot of character in the side. And if anything is going to win second division this season, apart from the normal skill and fight and all that type of thing, it's character. And I've got it, I think.
Oh, McFarlane, a fine goal! What beautiful football! And that could mean promotion for Derby.
Oh, you are a bloody disgrace! For missing the target from there, you want bloody shooting!
You just recognise the talent of an individual player.
I can see no point in you taking corners. I'd much prefer you sticking it in.
You find them, you sign them, you handle them.
Get in there. That's what I pay you for.
He made Rolls Royces out of pig iron. Just find players who you knew could do a job, you knew you could mould them into anything you want, and then prove it and do it. And he did it. Time and time and time again.
Well, it had taken us a couple of years to establish ourselves in the First Division after winning promotion. But by 72, you know, as a side, we were really getting it together.
We're finding a bit of room. And back again, John Radford with him.
We just kept plugging away and we got better and we got more exciting and we got more confident.
At the end of the season, the battle for the First Division title was a 3-horse race. Having completed their fixtures, the Derby players went on holiday to Mallorca and waited nervously for the results.
Liverpool, if they'd won at Arsenal their last match, they'd have beaten us. And Leeds just needed a draw at Wolves. Peter Taylor wanted all the players to come round because he had a telephone link with someone in Madrid that was going to let us know whether we'd actually won the championship or not. And the strange thing was that the telephone link broke down before Peter Taylor could say for definite, you've won the league. And we knew the next morning because the place was just inundated with cameramen, reporters.
Brian Clough at this moment is on holiday in the Scilly Isles, but last night we got in touch with him.
I wanted everybody to feel like I felt last night, everybody in the world in actual fact, and this morning. It was an unforgettable feeling, and I only wish that, you know, everybody could have shared it with me and everybody in the world.
It turned into a big, big fiesta at the hotel with people wearing sombreros, people getting thrown into the swimming pool.
It's not very often you can get to the peak of your career surrounded with your mum and dad and your wife and your 3 kids.
With an unfashionable team, I mean, or club I should say, I mean, it's not Arsenal. Derby isn't Arsenal.
A lot of people you claimed at the beginning didn't really give Derby County credit for winning it, but surely since then you've had your full acknowledgement, haven't you?
There were a lot of silly people that didn't, Frank, yes. The more intelligent ones among you did.
The title triumph proved a springboard that launched Brian from mere manager to celebrity.
What makes me laugh?
I mean, you have a sense of humour, obviously.
I went to see you on Thursday night at Talk of the Midlands in Derby. Oh, I'm sorry, it was Mike Yarwood.
He doesn't do a bad job on you, as you might see in a moment. Have you ever thought of extending your career in the entertainment business? Manager, television? Would you like to play Hamlet or pantomime or something like that?
I think I'd like to play Hamlet, but I've no great ambition to be a Shakespearean actor. If that was offered to me, I'd have to change some of the words. He was a good lad. He could have been better.
He was a big head. I mean, he was a man with great certainty of point of view, of attitude. He didn't see the other side of the argument too often at all.
But there's some fella in London, England, named some Brian Clough, some soccer player or something. Anyway, I heard all the way in America, heard all the way in Indonesia that this fella talks too much. They say he's another Muhammad Ali. There's just one Muhammad Ali. And I want you to, whoever you are, you're not a fighter, and you don't take my job. I'm the talker. Now, Clough, I've had enough. Stop it.
Well, are you going to stop it?
No, I want to fight him.
I think people loved that aspect of him. They didn't know what he was going to say and what he was going to do. And I mean, the things he came out with, they did just spontaneously laugh. You know, they were funny.
I mean, famously, on the Muhammad Ali interview that I did, Brian at the end was one of those who stood up and asked a question. And he said to Muhammad Ali, he said, "You lost, Muhammad." He said, "You lost the fight." He said, "You lost your temper." And I was looking at this guy, who the hell is this? Telling me, the world champion. But that was Brian.
Are you having a nice time in England?
Yeah, all but now. He was wonderful. I was terrified of Muhammad Ali, not him.
I think that was the beauty of talking to him. You felt you had to be on your mettle and just wait and get into the contest if he gave you the opportunity.
He'd point out things that were going to upset somebody, but it didn't stop him, and it was magical. That's how he was. If you think something, say it.
We're now not going home and enjoying it. We're not seeing as much football as we should, and we're getting too much of that, and I suggest you shut up and show more football.
There's not been anybody since, I submit, in a television studio that could electrify you like Brian Clough did.
I criticised Sir Alf when he was on the top. His character now will stand him in good stead because he's a bit of a stubborn bugger.
The Polish women in the corp who used to serve the cheese and the polony and all that type of thing, when I had a go at the... I was doing a lot of television in those days. It was the only time I fell out with them, when I hammered the Poles, when they beat us in the World Cup, and I had a go at the goalkeeper.
That other clown at the other end was.
Yeah, but you keep calling him... Hey, Brian, you keep calling him a clown, but in fact that fellow has made some fantastic saves, and he's kept England...
And my portions of polony and cheese dramatically dropped overnight, and the Polish ladies didn't speak to me for ages and ages, but I think they're forgiving me now.
The qualities that had seen him so in demand by television were now the very ones that brought him into conflict with Derby chairman Sam Longson.
Clough was a bit of a gamble for Derby, and my goodness, Sam found the best manager in the land, who was big on television, was a celebrity, was quoted everywhere, and became bigger than Sam Longson. And Sam, like any chairman, couldn't handle that, and he thought he was neglecting his duties. So in the end, he had to say, this is not good enough, you've got to rein this in. You're supposed to be here running what is now a big football club. I don't want you on telly every week.
The biggest mistake he's made, I think, of criticising and insulting personnel of the football world.
The directors thought he was out of control, and the Football League used to write and say, your manager has done this and your manager's done that, and so the board had to address Brian, why was he doing this? Because there was something in the press about Brian Clough said this or Brian Clough said that.
It's not a fight between Brian and myself and Peter. It's a fight between, shall we say, right or wrong.
It does surprise me a little bit that people who want me to stop putting two words together can't put them together themselves.
In those days, he used to resign every single week from Derby. And then one day Sam Longson decided, well, okay, yeah, I'll accept it. And then Brian just couldn't believe it.
I resigned and they've accepted it. Peter and I are now officially finished with this Derby County Football Club.
Can you tell us why you resigned? Brian, can you just answer?
That is the last question. Thank you very much indeed.
It was just an incredible shock, not just to the players. The whole of Derby could not believe that it had happened.
The drama at Derby started in the streets outside the ground just before the kick-off. There you can see the crowd about an hour, three-quarters of an hour before the match.
That day when he came back for Derby's first match after the walkout was just incredible. There was Sam Longson taking the cheer of the crowd in one little area of the director's box, and Clough had sneaked in round the back, and of course the cheers were 3 times as loud for him.
And there in the stand is Brian Clough.
He just had to milk it, and he did.
Clough then left for London and the Parkinson Show, where he was as forthright as ever.
I would love a few chairmen on your programme occasionally. I believe the very sight of them brings the game into disrepute. And every time they open their mouths, it kills it.
With Derby just a memory, Clough and Taylor headed south for the sea and sand of Brighton and Hove Albion.
Well, of course, you've been renowned in the past, particularly at Derby, Brian, for being a very controversial, very outspoken character. Will we be seeing this type of Brian Clough at Brighton?
I prefer to think it's a touch of honesty, young man.
While Brighton were languishing in the old third division at English football's summit, Don Revy's Leeds United were once again champions.
It was just an unbelievable time to be associated with Leeds United, but that's what the gaffer created, and it was a pleasure and an honour to be part of that.
Well, I think there was a great respect from me to them and from them back to me. We were very, very close, and I don't know, there was a bond that nobody could break.
And we play all the way for Leeds United. Ellen Road is the only place.
Revy's affection for Leeds wasn't shared by many neutrals.
I would love to see the tightening up of referees extended to such an extent where it would be a crime to go and clobber somebody.
More often than not, on Football Focus, every Saturday, Cloughie would be on there. And I don't think we were his favourite club, to be honest, or his favourite players. He used to really have a right go at us.
The dirty Leeds tag didn't stop Revy becoming England's new manager, leaving a vacancy at Elland Road.
The gaffer did tell us that he recommended to the board of directors John Giles and Billy Bremner be a joint managerial, and that would have gone down well. Typical our board didn't listen to our gaffer, which I think they should have done.
I would think if you'd have said any manager out of 1,000 that Brian Clough wouldn't have been the name anybody had come up with. For our board to go and appoint him was the most amazing thing.
You ain't going to believe this, but he was a nervous man meeting us, and you wouldn't think that, would you? The first meeting, I think that was his downfall, because he actually went through, what he thought of each and every one of us. His remarks wasn't very nice, to say the least. What he said to Eddie was, you should have played far more matches than you have done, because if you'd have been a racehorse, you'd have been shot, young man.
I think if he'd have come in and just said, look, never mind what I said in the past, you're a good side, and I only said the things I did to try and upset you a bit, professionalism, it would have been accepted. But he came in and he wouldn't let it die, he wouldn't let it rest.
And almost his first action, as I think is famously known, was to tell them to put away all their medals because they only got them by cheating. Hardly designed to get people on your side.
There, the man who takes over from Don Revy, Brian Clough.
Under the old gaffer's watchful eye, Clough saw his first match in charge of Leeds descend into chaos.
Off here
at the slippery slope for him at the start of that season. They couldn't find their form, or didn't want to find it. I don't know. I think there were some players there who didn't want to play for Clough.
We were brought up on playing for each other, working for each other. We were a family, and there was just no feeling round the place. It was just a matter of we're going out to play a match, and you know, we don't really want to play for this guy, and so therefore there was a bad feeling round the dressing room.
I ended up with John O'Hare following Brian to Leeds United, and I knew after one day it was a no-go situation. I've never come to an abrupt halt as suddenly as that. The players obviously weren't prepared to take him. And I even sat in at one or two players' meetings where they were trying to get rid of him.
O'Hare can't shake off Gallagher, although that hit the referee. And here's Clark! The referee may have helped Leeds. He has!
Clough won just one match at Leeds, and after 6 weeks he was axed.
How can anybody do anything in 44 days? Just impossible. I mean, God couldn't do anything, could he, in 44 days? Never mind Brian Clough.
Why is Mr. Clough the wrong man now when he was the right man exactly 6 or 7 weeks ago?
Because the board thinks that to keep the players happy and this is what we should do.
We have been blamed for getting him the sack. Now, my answer to that is purely and simply this. When a football club appoints a manager, that manager is appointed by the board of directors. And when that football club sacks a manager, he is sacked by the board of directors. End of story.
I think it's a very sad day for Leeds. I think it's slightly sad for football.
It was the first time he hadn't had Peter, and I think the first thing he did when he blew it at Leeds was to go and get Peter Taylor back on board with him. So I think that showed that Brian realised, you know, probably he wasn't able to do it on his own.
He went into the lion's den, I'm afraid, and they ate him. Not many people have done that.
The day he was sacked, Clough agreed to go on Yorkshire television to talk about his time at Leeds. Don Revie had also been approached to appear on the show.
Why did you come from Brighton to Leeds to take it over when you'd criticised them so much? Why do you take the job?
No, because I thought it was the best job in the country. I wanted to do something you hadn't done. I want to win the league, but I want to win it better.
Yeah, but there's no way you can win it better.
Why
Just
not?
No.
I couldn't give any other answer. And
No.
I wanted to win the European Cup.
Truthfully, I think that Brian is a fool of himself.
I want to be like me. Well, Don obviously wants to be like him. I believe in a different concept of football to Don. I think.
Clough's brief tenure at Leeds became the subject of David Peace's novel The Damned United.
What I did was, I in researching the novel, was to read all the books that the Leeds players had written about their time, all the books Clough had written himself, because he wrote a number of autobiographies and then books about Clough, then started to imagine what it would be like. So it's true, but filtered through my imagination.
Peace's posthumous portrayal of Clough was controversial and criticised by Brian's family, who rejected it, but it didn't stop the novel becoming a film.
I think what we've done with the film is very different to what the book is. The book is a very dark book and does concentrate on a very particular period of time in Clough's life and career. And if there's going to be one film about Brian Clough, if I was a member of his family, I would want it to be a joyous, celebratory thing and looking at all his achievements, not just this one very particular period. And so I completely understand why they've been very wary about the film.
I think the film was more accurate than I thought it would be, having read the book.
What upset me was that it portrayed as if Billy was a troublemaker, which couldn't be further from the truth. It was absolute rubbish, that. But that
a lot had been said about the players had got Brian Clough the sack, which wasn't, in our opinion, the case. Brian had got himself the sack. And when they told us the way the film was going to be portrayed, we thought, yes, that would be great, because everybody will be able to think, well, if that was me in the office or at work, and somebody had have come in and said that to me, what would my reaction be? And the amount of people I've talked to since, and I've never heard anybody not say, well, you can't believe a man would behave like that. And if he had have done it to me, the reaction would have been exactly the same.
Look,
Players' lounge, Brian. 10 minutes.
The guy who played Clough, by Christ, what an actor he is, because I closed my eyes.
Now they smile and they talk about things that he said or did, you know, and that has to be true to him. That has to be in the film, and more of that has to be in the film. So I think the film, I hope, does far more justice to him as a man than maybe the book did.
I was on the floor when I got sacked at Leeds. I was out of work and I was a so-called failure, despite the financial settlement I got, which made me secure financially for the first time in my life.
That payoff gave Clough time to enjoy his family and his life's other love.
My favourite sport's cricket. I love cricket. I've always loved cricket. I would love to have been an opening bat. You know, to have been out there, you don't have to rely on anybody, or certainly not too many people, and that's the thing that appeals to me, you know.
Come up to see me, make me smile.
After 4 months out of the game, Clough was back, and perhaps with a sense of déjà vu, as he took charge of second division strugglers Nottingham Forest.
Do you feel at all apprehensive?
Oh no, not at all. I feel, you know, I'm in good nick physically and I'm in good nick mentally.
What is your mental attitude after that break?
It's fine. It's had time to, you know, recover from the episode at Leeds, and I've taken stock of things and I've had a good rest and I've enjoyed being out of the game.
We had a real furious Brian Clough. We had a man who was, you know, desperate to go and prove himself, one of the great managers of all time.
I felt like a square peg in a round hole at Leeds, so I would have actually walked down the motorway to sign for him, but I drove down instead, signed for Nottingham Forest. I actually took a drop in wages, which my good lady Anne said, don't you take a drop in wages. But when he put the contract in front of me, he said, that's all you're getting, and I just signed it.
Taylor stayed at Brighton, and then eventually he was persuaded to come and join me here, and then everything... Why was he persuaded?
Why did you persuade him?
Oh, I think two people can do a job better than one for a start, and his expertise in finding players and having a knowledge of football was second to none at that particular time.
There was just a little spark missing from the things that he was doing, and it was really when Peter Taylor rejoined him at Forest that maybe that little spark returned, and then he was absolutely superb.
Clough and Taylor reunited, worked their own brand of alchemy on Nottingham Forest-based metal, and again produced gold.
We were a group of players, in many aspects, just trying to find our feet. But we'd had a few bad experiences, you know, with the manager before, John, and I particularly couldn't get on with him no matter what we did. But when anyway, Brian Clough arrived in '75, changed our lives, changed our whole outlook in football.
If he hadn't come along at that stage, I think I would have gone out of the game, because my career wasn't going very well, and like, as I say, a lot of people have blamed everything else other than myself. And it was when he came in the door, basically told me what he thought was wrong with me. I didn't live right, I was slovenly, I was too heavy. But he thought I had talent, and that if I applied myself properly, he thought he could do it.
Robertson. Good running by Bowyer, number 8.
Clough did realise that this boy had great talent, and so did Peter Taylor. And suddenly the whole outfield play went through John, and rightly so too, because he was mesmeric.
And I can remember talking to the players there, and they said, well, what do you mean we're going to be successful? And I said, well, it's not a case of if we're going to be successful, it's just a case of when. And they looked at me and said, well, how do you know that? And I said, well, Peter Taylor and Brian Clough. I said, no betting. We'll be successful.
The dynamic duo did bring success. A third-place finish saw the Midlanders promoted to the First Division for the 77-78 season.
Alongside you here is Peter Taylor. What's so special about him? Where does he fit into the team?
Oh, it would take me all night, Frank, to tell you what's...
Was an exceptionally funny man. He was... he made Brian Clough laugh.
Peter was usually the one with the one-liners, such as if you'd you'd go and see him and Brian for a rise, you know, he'd say, well, we'll get his shoes soled and healed and that's a rise.
Brian, he used to come and knock on the door at Middlesbrough, and he used to say, "Is Pete in?" And I said, "Yes, come on in, Brian." And he'd come in and they'd be talking football all night.
From their playing days together at Middlesbrough, their special relationship saw them manage together for the best part of 2 decades.
Perhaps you could say that I was the shop window and he was the brains. He certainly runs the place on a lot of occasions.
Peter Taylor was the more outgoing guy. He was the one who knocked Clough into shape a bit. And when Clough got his injury and was out of the game, Peter propped him up and said, "Come on, you're going to be all right. We're going to manage a football club. We'll do it together." By the end of it, Clough was the one who knew exactly what he wanted to do. And Peter Taylor followed in his slipstream, because he wasn't the sort of guy who wanted to be on telly necessarily, Peter.
It was a marvellous partnership, and Clough always gave him the highest credit for his ability to find players.
And then he'd kind of deliver them to Brian Clough, who'd knock them into shape, the way he did.
Brian and Peter together, the good cop, bad cop act, at times got very, very comical.
I personally felt that during my time there, they were both bad cops, but...
Good support in the centre. O'Neill! Yes! Martin O'Neill has scored!
I went to see him in his office a number of times and I was absolutely petrified. I felt that I had done my stint at wide right-hand side. Well, I wanted to go and play central midfield. And in those days, of course, there were numbers 1 to 11 and number 12, just being the one sub. And he said, "I'll give you a choice. What number did you wear last week?" "Number 7, boss." He said, "Right, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do." I said, "I'll give you a choice. Number 7 or number 12. So I never bothered him again, you know.
How do you react though when someone, you know, from your playing staff comes in and says, "Boss, I think you're doing this wrongly"?
Good. Well, I ask him which way he thinks it should be done. We get down to it, and then we talk about it for 20 minutes, and then we decide I was right.
They were a perfect blend. They were absolutely ideal, because when Clough used to knock you down, people would be there just picking you up.
A statue of Clough stands in Nottingham town centre, and now the two families have successfully campaigned for one of Brian and Peter to be erected outside Pride Park in Derby.
I remember going to a reserve match with them. I remember Peter, you know, hold it, push it, turn it.
Hold it, hold it!
He always came out with a quip to make Brian laugh.
Yes, they did.
And that was good, because you needed, I think that was part of the partnership.
Yeah.
You needed that.
Yeah.
There was something magical about the two of them at their very, very best.
Nottingham's Pied Pipers had not only created an entertaining brand of football that drew crowds, but it also amassed points.
From Burton Joyce, Nottingham, near Mr. Saville, I and 4 of my friends from the Nottingham High School would love to meet the Nottingham Forest football team. Perhaps they would sing their song on your programme, and then we could meet them as well.
Chances are that sitting at the side of the pitch here, that you and Peter Taylor might start humming it during a match?
I wouldn't think so, no. There's rather a different sound comes out of Peter Taylor's and my mouths during football matches.
After I'd written that song, I've... only joking. We came into the charts at number 14, because I'd bought 4,000 copies. And unfortunately, I think we went straight back out again.
We haven't got the world in our hands yet, despite the fact we've played reasonably well for 5 or 6, 7 months. At this precise moment, we haven't won anything.
Gemmell to Woodcock, again a run in on the keeper, and this time number 4. Manchester United buried in their own backyard by a team that has the hallmark of its creator, Brian Clough.
Every single game was something to savour. We looked forward to the game so much that it was an extraordinary feeling.
Forest weren't just about firepower. Clough and Taylor had added steel in defence in the shape of Kenny Burns and Britain's then most expensive custodian, Peter Shilton.
And that's what they paid £300,000 for.
Peter used to inevitably get a lot of headlines, and it used to get on Burnsy's nerves, and rightly so as well. And Burnsy used to say, I'm bloody sick of reading about him. He said he's never had a shot to save for a month, and over periods of time he didn't have shots to save, but when he had one he saved it, you see. That's what made him the best.
I said before we kicked the ball, I thought we'd qualify for Europe, no more. And that would have been an achievement, but having signed Shilton, I said then that anything was possible.
I remember going to Coventry and we needed a point that night to clinch a championship.
This is Wallace, Ferguson, oh, and Shilton says, I've almost won the championship.
Just a season after promotion, Forest secured the League Cup, deposed Liverpool as champions and saw their manager become only the second after Herbert Chapman to win the title with 2 clubs.
We go out to entertain the public, we go out to pack football grounds, we try to entertain, and you never know, John, you and your profession just might recognise that we are a good side.
They played at Nottingham Forest, in my opinion, what I call carpet football. Football on the ground, on the deck, in defeat, and good retention of the ball and looking for the through ball on the deck, in the spaces between the centre halves and the full backs, you know.
2 against 2, Gemmell's arrived all the way from the back, and With hasn't seen him, he has now.
We just get on with how I feel the game should be played. We don't play in the clouds. If God wanted us to play football in the clouds, he'd have put grass there.
And the other thing, of course, the discipline of the players on the pitch was, I think, was remarkable. No red cards at Nottingham Forest, you know. Very few yellow cards. He wouldn't allow that.
I recommended 30-odd years ago that when a player was repeatedly getting booked, for example, and in trouble, not only discipline him, but discipline the manager as well. You go and find Alex Ferguson 50,000 quid, and knowing how tight Alex is with money, I'm telling you, nobody would get booked in Manchester United's side, because he'd step on it straight away.
Forest's championship victory meant a place in the European Cup, Clough's holy grail. Clough had been there 5 years earlier with Derby, but had endured a bitter experience in a semi-final in Turin.
The match over in Juventus, where we lost 3-1, was the only football game I've ever played in where I nearly ended up in tears, knowing that we'd been cheated in front of UEFA officials, the television cameras, a packed crowd.
Free kick against Derby. That's the 38th free kick given against Derby. Juventus have had 8.
We weren't hurt so much losing it, because all footballers get hurt losing it, but we know we'd been cheated. We knew the referee cheated us.
After Derby had lost in Turin, Clough walked into the press conference and said, I'm not talking to you lot, I don't talk to cheating bastards, and walked out.
Nottingham Forest's first hurdle couldn't have been more daunting. The holders, Liverpool. But a 2-0 win at the City Ground saw Clough's side travel to Anfield with confidence.
It's come to Dalglish! Oh, what a save!
We showed what we really were all about as a team by going to Anfield and getting a 0-0 draw and knocking them out in the first round.
That whistle signals the end of Liverpool's hold on the European Cup. And Nottingham Forest, with Brian Clough and Peter Taylor, masterminding a tactical victory. It's the end of an era. Not so much a low profile as a full-face shot of Brian Clough as he comes to take his position.
I think when we drew 3-3 with Cologne in the semi-final of the European Cup at the City Ground, and the media and I think most football supporters throughout the country didn't really give us a chance, knowing that even if we went and drew in Germany, we were out because of the away goals. But Brian just stood up in front of the camera and just said, I hope nobody's stupid enough to write us off.
Bowyer in the 6-yard area. Flicked on, it's Bowyer! Yes, he's got it! And Nottingham Forest are in the European Cup final. And they've done it the hard way.
Earlier in the season, Clough had broken the UK transfer record to make Trevor Francis the first £1 million player. In Munich's Olympic Stadium against Malmö of Sweden, he proved he was worth every penny.
There's Trevor Francis.
makes his debut in European football in the final of Europe's major club competition. They're calling him Bob Houghton, but if you don't know that face, you must have been somewhere on a desert island. Sheet and returns a great deal of the cheque. The European Cup has come to Nottingham Forest. John McGovern holds the European Cup aloft.
Amazingly, 12 months on, Forest were at it again. A second European Cup final, this time against Kevin Keegan's Hamburg in Madrid.
And I remember Peter Taylor on the day of the match saying, we're going to win this, 1-0. So how do you know? I've looked at the players, I've seen them training, I know what's gone into the minds. The attitude's right, everything's right, we'll win this. And even Clough would, that's a bit bold.
Robertson shoots! Oh, score!
But he was right, and because he could see it in their eyes, that they were up for it, they knew exactly what they were going to have to do. They were the champions and they were going to retain that title.
It was just like a snowball effect. You just gathered momentum and momentum all the time, and next thing you know, you're the champions of the country, then you win the European Cup and you win it again.
I mean, to win 2 European Cups, successive years, is a remarkable story. It's a fairy tale. It's historical.
I'm very proud and privileged to be part of that great team.
It was a wonderful time for them all, you know, the European trips, and oh, I mean, we'll never forget them, any of us.
Everybody wanted an English club to win the European Cup, and that was one of the things that kept us going.
With back-to-back European Cups sitting on the Forest sideboard, it was perhaps inevitable that speculation would once again surround Clough regarding the biggest job in English football.
Well, you know, I'll tell you a story. Because I had the England job at the time, everybody was clamoring for Brian Clough. And I remember going to Bert Millichip, who was a very nice association chairman. And I said to Bert one day, Bert, listen, you know, I'm having a rough time, and everybody wants Brian Clough. So, look, forget about me. Let's think about the country. Give the job to Brian.
Hello, Ted.
Morning, Bob.
If you give it to Brian, and he's successful, everybody's happy. I'll be happy, you'll be happy, the country will be happy, the fans will be happy, the team will be happy. He's brilliant. And if you give him the job and he fails, then that's the end of the clamour, you know, the clamour for Brian Clough to be the England manager. So we can't lose either way. Give him the job, let him try it.
They thought I was